So we're going to do this in sections, so this would be sort of like part 2, and what we'll talk about now is the flow of cargo through the pipelines and how the valves interact with the flow of cargo. How do we get the cargo basically from up here, ashore, down through here, into the ship, into the tank where we want it to go. It's one thing to recognize that by looking at it, it's another thing to recognize that or tell somebody else how to do it. Because when you're giving an order, when you're in charge of this cargo operations, you're going to have to tell people what to do and where to go. All right? That's not intuitive for a lot of you, but this is what's going to happen. You're going to be behind the screen back there, running the operation in here with radios and telling your crew what to do and making sure that you can manage this whole thing without even seeing what's going on your vessel. So the only way to do that is, one, develop a good team, and two, have a common language. And this is all what we're talking about at this point of time, is getting a common language going here. So whenever we're tracing out a system, I always look at it as like a road map. We all sort of understand maps, well, maybe not anymore, but GPSs, they tell you which way to go. And inevitably, if you look at a pipeline and you look at that as a road, and you look at the valves as a means of controlling that road, maybe a stop sign, maybe a yield sign, something along that line. So whenever I look at a system like this and I first get into it, I say to myself, what do I want the system to do? What's the outcome? Well, I want to take cargo from here, and I want it to end up in there. So we have to follow the road to make that happen. So the cargo will come. I'm going to disconnect these two hoses here. And we're only going to go to the green system. Never do that. Don't pour water. Don't pour cargo into the ocean. Doesn't make for a good day. You can see here, somebody left some valves open. Let me make that point very clear. When you come into this tanker, when you come into the lab to do any kind of lab work, the first thing you want to do is make sure all the valves are closed. It's like an artist starting with a white palette. Make sure that there's nothing in here that's going to say, oh, I left the valve open and the cargo's going someplace I don't want it to go. First operation, close all valves. This one wasn't closed. I'm going to assume that there's a bunch that haven't been closed, but we'll go on anyway. So the cargo comes from here. We'll look at the shore side here first, later. But here we have pressure up to this particular valve coming from the shore. And this valve, oops, wrong one. This valve here, it actually goes to here. We're coming from the JP5 tank. This will control the flow of the cargo going into the tank. When we're loading, gravity, we don't have a pump on here, but gravity is going to be dropping the cargo down, and we're going to control the flow of that cargo to where we want it to go. Right? In some cases, if you're in a large facility, it's not going to be gravity, it's going to be a pump behind here pumping it to you, which will lead into some other issues that we'll talk about in class. But for now, we have gravity that's the forcing issue, getting the cargo to move. So think about pressure now for a moment, or think about your accelerator in your car. So if I open this valve from the shore, and I allow cargo to come down from the tank, I've got pressure